An Italian poet once said, "The richness of life lies in memories we have forgotten." It really is true. Just get together with family or friends and begin talking about remember when, and the memories pour out. You end up laughing or crying or sighing, wrapped up in the emotion of years gone by. The holidays are steeped in memories for most folks, memories of family get-togethers and dressing up for church, caroling to the neighbors, and finding the hoped-for toy under the Christmas tree. So grab your mug of hot cocoa and let these holiday memories take you back in time to a bygone era as you listen to some stories not too different from your own.
I'll bet you have a favorite toy from a Christmas long ago. Maybe it's tucked away in your attic. Maybe your mom gave it away to Goodwill once you left home. Or maybe you pull it out for your grandkids every time they come to visit. I still have my favorite toy, the punching bag I got the Christmas I was 6. I'm the boy there in the middle. Yep, that's me, Jimmy. That's my older brother, Donnie, and my younger brother, Paul. Look at us all dressed up for Christmas morning, waving at the camera. Who else could get 3 boys dressed up and smiling for Dad to film except Mom? Mom, a person who knew how to celebrate any moment and capture the memories. One spunky gal, my dad used to call her. Mom was the middle child in her family too, and I think she understood how forgotten the middle child can feel. You're not the firstborn, the future executive, and the son everyone expects the most from. Donnie took that role seriously, graduating from college, making quite a career for himself. And you're not the youngest, the baby who gets away with everything once he flashes his cute smile. Paul's still tearing it up and smiling his way out of trouble. You're just the one in the middle, the one it's easy to overlook, but I figured I had a shot at getting that punching bag I wanted so badly because I'd made sure to write Santa twice with my request. Once the day I saw the punching bag in the Sears catalog, and again when my first grade teacher told us we had to write Santa a letter before Christmas. Still, I didn't know for sure if I would get it because it'd been a hard year with the bills from Grandma's illness. Mom was tired from traveling back and forth to the hospital and then taking care of Grandma while she recovered. She wasn't even able to be there for Donnie's birthday party. Aunt Louise stepped in and made Donnie's cake. Friends still came over and brought Donnie presents, but he didn't get the present he'd asked our folks for. After Donnie's birthday, it didn't seem like there would be enough for us kids to get the big presents we were counting on for Christmas. Now that I think about it, it probably didn't hurt my chances that I wanted a punching bag. Mom probably figured that if I were hitting the bag, I wouldn't be hitting my brothers. We couldn't believe it when we came out Christmas morning, saw the loot under the tree. It was more than we'd hoped for. I couldn't stop punching that bag. Bam! Bam, 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 bam! It was exactly the one I'd seen in the Sears catalog. Blue bag on a tall pole. It was just the right height. That bag took everything I threw at it and came right back for more. I grew taller over the years, and eventually the bag leaned to one side. Too tired to bounce back anymore. But I kept it in my room forever, threw a punch at it every once in a while. It took the brunt of a lot of my anger when life wasn't fair. Saved my brothers from some punches I felt like throwing their way from time to time. It became a reminder to me of how strong I'd grown, how tall I'd become, and how every once in a while, dreams really do come true.
If you think about it, the presents you receive on Christmas Day tell a lot about you. After all, you ask for gifts that you're interested in, things that reflect your personality and what you like to do. Future musicians ask for drum sets or guitars, future engineers beg for Legos, and future healthcare professionals ask for pretend medical bags with stethoscopes and blood pressure cuffs. In a way, the presents you received as you grew were a guide to the person you were becoming.
Well, my husband Bob tells me I'm a fashion diva, and he grimaces every time I say I'm going shopping, but he shouldn't be surprised. My dad played all of our home movies for Bob when he and I were dating, and I got clothes and jewelry and Barbies in every one of these Christmases my dad filmed. It was definitely a sign of things to come. You can go back all the way to when I was 6 and see that I was already into pretty clothes because I even cared about matching my robe and pajamas. Oh, I remember climbing the stairs on Christmas Eve and knowing that when I woke up the next morning, there would be presents under the tree. Of course, I got my first Barbie when I was 6, and I thought she was beautiful. She came in a neat vinyl case that you could store her and her accessories in. I spent hours combing her hair and putting her clothes on. My older sister Karen helped me with the shoes because those were hard to get on Barbie's feet. But the best part of all was when I opened up the boxes of clothes. Back then we had the pretty plaids and flower prints. And I liked my accessories too, so my mom bought me plaid jewelry to go with my clothes. You know, fake plastic earrings or necklaces and bracelets that you could put together yourself. My favorite boxes on Christmas morning are still the ones with clothes in them. Just like then, I try on all my outfits and spend time arranging my jewelry so I can see what goes with what. Even though we grow older, I don't think the little girl inside of us ever gets tired of dressing up. In our minds, we're still princesses.
Did you ever have a Christmas where you watched your brothers and sisters opening their presents, finding the very thing they begged and pleaded for, then opened up your gifts, only to be disappointed? If you were polite, you pretended you were pleased with the handmade blouse Grandma had sewn for you, or the ugly sweater your mother bought to keep you warm. If you weren't as diplomatic, you may have spent the rest of Christmas morning pouting on the couch, vowing never to talk to Santa again. Hopefully, the gift you wished for was just pushed to the back of the pile, and you felt the thrill of hearing, "Wait, here's another one back here."
Let me tell you, my parents knew how to decorate for Christmas. My mom had a jillion traditions that were part of celebrating Christmas, and she faithfully carried out every one. From filling her old hose with fruit, nuts, and candies for us, to lining the back of the front door with Christmas cards in the shape of a tree. It wasn't easy to get 3 boys to help with decorating, and she really had to pull rank on us when it was time to dress up for our annual family Christmas picture. Even harder than getting us dressed was getting us to quit clowning around and hold still for the camera. Of course, a more realistic family portrait would have showed 3 boys in t-shirts and jeans rolling around on the floor and wrestling with each other. It was probably the only time during the year when we wore suits, but it was important to her, so we did it. Then there was the tree itself and the huge pile of presents underneath it. I still remember the Christmas when my mom wrapped my brother's present like a chimney with Santa peeking out. There was always more presents than we could count under the tree. I guess they must have saved money every month all year long so they can indulge our Christmas wishes. Pop hardly gave us anything during the rest of the year. If we came to him with a request for anything that wasn't a necessity, he just smiled and said, "Well, I guess you better find a neighbor who needs some work done so you can buy that." But come Christmas, it was like the floodgates of generosity opened, and he bought us everything that we said we wanted. So I really got a scare the Christmas I was 12. The longer we opened presents that morning, the more worried I got. My brothers were getting things they'd asked for, but I kept opening stuff I didn't want. Rob, my middle brother, got the Hardy Boys book he really wanted and a knife and axe set that was just like the real thing. He was so excited that he used the knife to open everybody's presents after that. Johnny got the rubber ball he'd been begging for, one exactly like the one we used in school during recess. First, I opened a box with a tie. I tried to act like I liked it, draping it around my neck and commenting on the color. Next came a small box with a watch in it, then 2 framed pictures from the Silver Award art series to decorate my room with. I was starting to feel a little desperate when Rob got his big gift wrapped like a chimney. He pulled out his trusty knife and carefully slit the ribbon, then the paper. I think his excitement got the best of him, though, because he finally just ripped the paper. It was a bowling set, one we could use in the house, and I was so jealous. Not because I wanted it, but because he'd gotten everything he wanted and I was batting 0. As if on cue, my pop appeared in the doorway and said, "Hey, what's this I found in the hall?" It was a big box with a huge shiny red bow, and he handed it to me. My heart started pounding. Maybe Christmas wasn't a bust after all. Still, I was worried because what I'd been praying for was a brand new hi-fi radio of my very own for my room, and the box I unwrapped was for a TV tray. I let out a huge sigh of relief when I pulled out the radio I wanted so badly. I was so happy I could have cried, but I held it in. Rob even put his knife down for a minute to see my prize. I spent the rest of the day in my room, lying on my bed and listening to tunes. One relieved and really happy young guy.
Big families are not as common as they used to be. Several generations ago, it was not unheard of for families to have 4 or more children. In part, that was out of necessity. Many family businesses, like farms, needed lots of hands to lighten the load. And in a different era of medicine, more children died in childbirth or at a young age. To be an only child was different and usually not a choice the parents made, unlike today. Only children have a unique childhood with its own sets of pros and cons.
Interesting comments pop up when people find out that I'm an only child. Comments like, "I bet you got everything you ever wanted," or "You're so lucky because you didn't have to share a room with anyone," or even, "Oh, how sad, I bet you were lonely." Well, some of that is true, and some of that isn't. I've never had brothers or sisters, so I don't know what that's like, but it must have its good sides and bad sides, just like being an only child. There are all kinds of extras tacked onto my status as an only. My folks had a hard time having children. I think my mom had some miscarriages before I was born, although she never really talked about it. Plus, I was born close to Christmas, so the holidays were always a huge deal at my house. The focus is pretty intense when you're an only child because you're all their hopes and dreams and fears wrapped up into one. Actually, my mom and dad treated me in 2 different ways. My dad didn't handle me with kid gloves like my mom did. My dad's brothers lived in town, so I had a bunch of cousins that I played with a lot. They were kind of my brothers in a way when I was growing up. They came over all the time, and we'd do all the crazy stuff boys do. There was an area next to our house that would ice up a lot during the winter, and we'd skate on it with just our shoes. Some of the older boys were good at it, but we all busted most of the time after a couple of seconds on our feet. I was younger than most of them, so I'd fall and have to hide that it hurt because I didn't want to look like a baby. My mom would watch in the background, trying not to act concerned in front of my aunt, but she always worried about me getting hurt and trying to keep up with the older boys. My dad didn't care, though. He'd cheer for me every time I jumped in the fray, which drove my mom crazy. I guess it was a good balance for me. And when my cousins weren't around, I spent a lot of time with my folks. I think only children are closer to their parents for that reason, you know. I mean, you talk to them a lot, and they're your playmates much of the time. My dad was great about spending time outside with me. He had more time for me at Christmas because he'd be off from work for 2 weeks, so I have a lot of memories of time with him out in the snow. He'd grab the camera and out we'd go. He'd just follow me around, filming me, shaking the trees, or making snowballs. Eventually, I'd convince him to put the camera down and play with me, and we'd build a snowman or wrestle in the snow. Now that I'm older and have kids of my own, the focus isn't on me at Christmas anymore, and that's fine with me. What's one more birthday at this age or another tie for Christmas, you know? But I think about my folks a lot this time of year because it was just the three of us for so long. Dad still spends part of the holidays with us, but Mom passed away a couple of years ago, and I sure do miss her at Christmas time. She told me once that she loved the nativity story. She said she understood the tug at Mary's heart when she held her baby for the first time. Mom said that the moment I was born, she became a mother and nothing could ever take that away. She told me the year I was born was the best Christmas she ever had.
The post-war era was a time of unprecedented growth for Americans. Families grew and opportunities sprang up everywhere. With cars growing increasingly affordable and an ever-improving highway system, more and more families moved across the country in pursuit of better jobs. But the hometowns those families left behind beckoned to them during the holidays, and plenty of families hopped in the family car to make the trek back to Grandma's for a turkey dinner when Christmas rolled around.
I can remember the Christmas we set out for Granny and Pops like it was yesterday. We'd never taken out across the country before that I could remember, and there were a bunch of us squeezed into that car headed for Illinois. My folks and my two older brothers and my Nana and Uncle Bob for part of the trip. I remember stopping at interesting places to stretch our legs and to eat a bite, running after my brothers but hardly ever catching up. That was the year I kept my first rabbits, Inky, Smokey, and Whitey. Nana showed me how to care for them, and I did all right. Seemed like the hardest part of it was getting them to line up straight and hold still when I wanted to show them off. That was also the trip Eddie found a cat at a roadside park and tried to convince Mom to take it along. The cat ran off, though. I think it knew how crowded the car and trailer already were. We left Arizona on Route 66 and headed out on the open road. We stopped off at a tourist spot and played around, posing for Dad and pretending to ride a cow. Eddie kept falling off. Even Nana got in the act, posing in a wood cutout and letting Dad film her. Eddie, Russ, and I goofed off in front of the teepees, Russ running around like he had ants in his pants. Eddie pretended to scalp Russ, too, I think because Russ had been bugging him a lot in the car. I particularly
same town or just moved from the farms where they spent their childhoods to jobs in the bigger city suburbs not too far away. When that was the case, it was fairly easy to take a few days off at Christmas time to open presents at home and then travel to grandparents' homes to celebrate with family, making Christmas a special time to gather with loved ones.
I'll see my kids and grandkids soon for Christmas, something I look forward to for months and months, and it takes me back to when I was a child. We lived in town but not far from both sets of my grandparents. My daddy's folks lived in town too, and my mom's lived in their farm just an hour out. Our tradition was to spend Christmas Eve with my daddy's parents, Meemaw and Pawpaw, Christmas morning at our house, and then Christmas night and the next day out at the farm. We always started the rounds in town because Pawpaw's birthday was the 23rd, so we'd celebrate his birthday and Christmas together. We'd bake him a cake, sing happy birthday, and then give him his birthday presents, usually a bottle of Old Spice or some clothes. It seems like we gave him the same thing every year, but he always acted surprised and pleased, rewarding us with big hugs. After his birthday presents, we'd eat the cake Meemaw made him and then start the Christmas presents all around. For many years, Meemaw's dad, great-granddad, was with us too, although he didn't talk much or play with us. He seemed content just to sit there. Mom Meemaw would get us the best gifts. They weren't expensive presents, but they were always something we really enjoyed. Things like books and a doll for me and a car and construction set for my little brother Davy. She also liked to buy us a new set of winter pajamas every year. Davy liked the foot pajamas, and I liked it best when she bought me pink ones. We'd usually give her a calendar or other practical things she needed, and she always seemed pleased. The year we got our black and white kittens, Inky and Sam, we didn't put our aluminum Christmas tree up until Christmas Eve after we got back from my grandparents'. We were afraid those little scamps would pull the whole thing down while we was gone. I laugh now when I think of that aluminum tree. You never see them anymore. People either put up live trees or artificial ones that look exactly like the real thing. But when I was a little girl, we had an aluminum Christmas tree with branches that sparkled silver. We set it up in the corner of the living room right next to the bookshelves with the encyclopedias. And Davy and I would take out all the aluminum branches one by one and put them in the pole starting at the top. I'd help Davy with the ones he couldn't reach and help him slide the branches in when he got stuck. We'd work all the way down until we had all the branches into the very bottom. Mama would work at untangling the lights, and then she'd help us put them on as well as the ornaments. There was a spinning light of some kind that would change the colors of the tree so that sometimes it looked red and sometimes blue and so on. We liked to turn off the living room lights and watch the tree turn different colors. We'd also spend time baking my mama's famous chocolate sheet cake and making stockings to take for everyone at the farm. The baking was fun because I felt so grown up working with my mama in the kitchen, and I really was helping because we took that food we baked to my granny's the next day. Davy tried to help, although he was in the way most of the time. Somehow Mama found a way to keep him busy, though he seemed to have fun doing the little tasks she gave him. We'd get the usual on Christmas morning: dolls, cars, games, books, and other toys we'd ask for. One of the presents I'll always remember was the robot Davy got one year. It had lights that blinked and it could walk all by itself. It seemed amazing to us at the time. Of course, it wouldn't compare to any of the toys kids get nowadays. Mama and Daddy would get more grown-up things like clothes and shoes and such. I think it was a ritual for my daddy to get all the shoes he needed for the next year on Christmas morning. I think my favorite part of Christmas always was going to the farm. My mama's whole family was there. I loved spending time with my cousins, Jane and Susie. Usually my granny would make matching dresses for us, and we'd feel pretty all dressed alike. Granny and Granddad had cows and chickens, so we'd follow them around trying to help any way we could. It was such fun to be out on their land with acres and acres to run on and time to play with my cousins. Granddad would let us sit on the tractor and pretend to drive. Daddy would do silly things like ride the little pony, Brownie, trying the whole time not to slip off. Before I knew it, those times were over. When my granddad died of a heart attack a few years later, Granny sold the farm and moved in with my aunt. Before long, all my grandparents passed and Christmas became a simpler affair. I think that's why I cherish the time with my children and grandchildren so much now, because I know how quickly those years go by, and I want them to have the same happy memories of spending time with family that I have from my childhood.
Perhaps part of the magic of Christmas is that it doesn't only happen on December 25th. It doesn't even have to be wintertime for someone to be inspired by the Christmas spirit. As the song My Christmas Room on Jimmy Dean's old Christmas album so wisely stated, the world would be a happier place if the spirit of Christmas could be kept all year long. Sometimes people's favorite Christmas memories don't happen in December at all.
I don't know if you'd call my favorite Christmas memory a Christmas memory at all, because it didn't even take place at Christmas. But it stands out in my mind as the best Christmas time I've ever had. Usually Christmas is a cold affair, with freezing winds and snow covering everything. Some people love that, and the cold weather certainly makes you think of Christmas. But I've never been crazy about cold weather, and as a child, I hated being stuck inside to play at Christmas time. I think that's why my favorite Christmas memory is from the summer we went to Santa Claus Land with my grandparents. That summer, Grandma and Grandpa came to our house and spent the weekend with us. We enjoyed the warm outdoor weather by eating our meals at the picnic table and playing outside with Grandma's dog. On Monday, we loaded up into their car and took off for Santa Claus Land. The drive was long enough that we got to stay in a Holiday Inn, which was a huge treat. Back in those days, it wasn't as common to stay in hotels as it is today, so that was a novelty that I never forgot. We even ate a chicken dinner there in the restaurant that was as good as my mama's. We drove on to the theme park the next day and got there just as it was opening. Santa greeted us as we came into the entrance. I knew he wasn't the real Santa, but it was still so much fun to talk with him. Grandma got into the act too, posing with Santa for Grandpa to film. We got to go into Santa's workshop and see how his elves were hard at work. The workshop looked just like a Swiss chalet, complete with a water wheel that looked like it powered the operations inside. We ate lunch in the cafeteria called Mrs. Claus's Kitchen. I remember that. They had really great strudel. And then I got to go into the gift shop and pick out anything that I wanted, which was no easy task given all that they had. I sat on a wooden reindeer and pretended that it was Rudolph, and then I watched Santa take a spin on the cup ride. Part of me wanted to spin in the Cocoa Cups, but I decided not to try it because I thought it might make me sick. One of the rides I enjoyed the most was the Christmas train. It went around and around a wide track, and it seemed like we got to ride it forever. That was the first time I'd ever ridden a train like that. The day came to an end too soon for me, but I was so exhausted from all the fun that when we left the theme park, I slept in the car the whole way. Well, at least until we stopped that night to stay in the hotel. You know, you dream about Santa and the North Pole, and there's something so magical about Christmas that it all seems distantly real in some way. When I remember that trip, it makes Christmas more exciting somehow, as if once upon a time, I really went to the North Pole.
Remember the joy of frolicking in a winter wonderland when you were a kid? Thrilled with the blank slate of snow on the ground and oblivious to Jack Frost nipping at your nose. It was a huge treat to wake up on a weekday and find out school had been canceled after an all-night snowstorm. Mom wrapped you up tight in layers of warm clothes, and out the door you went, bundled against the cold and ready to play. Snow angels, snow caves, snow men, there were hours of fun to be had with siblings and neighborhood chums in the untouched landscape of the new fallen snow.
The winter I was in 6th grade, we had one of those snowstorms that shut down school for days. There was nothing better that winter than getting out of school because of snow. I'll never forget the delight of waking up to a huge snowfall outside and waiting on pins and needles to find out if school was actually closed. And then we got the good news that school was closed, which meant an entire day of play with the other neighborhood kids. It was magical. Of course, the first morning, we had to shovel the snow out of the drive so Dad could try to get to work. It was hard work, but we didn't mind. The alternative was sitting at a desk in a classroom, staring at the snow and wishing we could play. My little brother followed me around with the shovel in his mitted hands, trying with all of his might to do his part. Then, our neighborhood friends showed up and joined us in the task, because Dad had told us that we could build whatever we wanted with the shoveled snow. Before we knew it, we had the drive cleared, plenty of snow to make a snow fort, and snowballs for a snow fight. And I remember that I didn't feel the cold at all because of the cute little boy from next door. He'd come to help when he saw all the activity. He was probably just bored and wanted something to do, but I let myself believe he was really there to see me. That afternoon, the two boys from next door played with my little brother in the field that ran behind our house. They did front flips in the snow until I thought their necks were going to give out, and ran after each other, pushing each other down in the soft, powdery snow. The darkness finally ended that day's fun and sent the boys to bed exhausted, but definitely happy. The next morning they came over again to lend a hand at building a snow cave in between the two houses. Before long, other neighbors wandered over with their little black dog, curious about the construction. With that many hands to help, it didn't take long to form the cave from the snow that had been piled up from the day before. And they played all sorts of games, pretending they were soldiers at war, and then using the whole backyard to play tag. We had more fun with our neighbors than we'd had the whole year, and it was the best school break I can remember.
Some of our most memorable Christmases are the ones that held surprises, like the arrival of family members who had said they couldn't make it, or a gift that was completely unexpected and deeply sentimental. Those memories fix forever that particular holiday is special and can summon the same feelings we felt then with an intensity that astounds us.
I had a very happy childhood. One of those childhoods filled with pleasant memories of playing dolls with my sister or ice skating on the pond with my mother. My father was gone a lot, putting in long hours at the office, while also finishing up his graduate degree so he could get the engineering job that he so desperately wanted. All the while, my mother took care of us and filled in for my father when he wasn't around. My mother was a truly beautiful woman. She had a ready smile and graciousness about her that made everyone feel at ease. My father adored her, and it was easy to see why. She kept herself looking beautiful and our house in order. My mother was also patient with me, like the time I wanted to cut my own birthday cake, but didn't really know how. She showed me how to slice the cake and helped me just enough to get the job done but not upstage me. And even when our finances dictated that her Christmas presents were still of a practical nature, like a new sewing machine, she managed to find delight in them, as if my father had given her exactly what she wanted, and not something that she needed as of a course of daily life. That's why I'll never forget the Christmas, the year my father finally finished school and got the promotion that he and my mother had so patiently waited for. I remember that he seemed particularly jolly that Christmas, acting silly when he carved the ham and making a scene out of losing to Aunt Caroline at cards. But I don't think any of us were prepared for the surprise that he gave my mother that year. We watched with excitement as she unwrapped the tiny box. Was it a necklace or a watch? What we saw took our breath away. Mother was speechless, completely undone. I'd never seen her so beside herself. She even started to cry. A diamond ring! I think Mother had made due and put us first for so many years that she'd nearly forgotten how special she was to all of us simply for being herself. And here was my father's chance to remind her that she was his treasure. She was absolutely surprised. Needless to say, her gift from my father was the talk of the family that Christmas. Everyone wanted to see her ring. Despite her shy smiles, I think Mother was proud of the ring. I think it was the perfect way for my father to tell her how much he appreciated her sacrifices over the years and how she was still his princess. It was a special Christmas for me, too. I got my very own suitcase with my name on it and the doll that I'd been asking for. I couldn't have been happier. Of course, the best present I got that Christmas was the time we spent together. Simple things like ice skating together, all 5 of us. My father was there, more relaxed than I'd seen him in years. Mother seemed herself and yet happier, and that feeling settled on us all like a comfortable quilt. My mother wore that special Christmas ring every day of her life.
The smell of pine needles, the lilt of Christmas carols, the smooth sweetness of hot chocolate and marshmallows. All of these things feel like the holidays. Christmas is magical in part because its familiar traditions take us back to vivid sensory experiences we had as children. But what do you do when those traditions become time-worn? How do you rekindle the magic when the traditions are all too familiar? How do you quiet the holiday chaos to hear the simple song the angels sang?
As a child, I thought it odd that my mother's favorite Christmas was the one she spent abroad with my father the year before I was born. After all, she loved Christmas time. Every year I was at home, she decked the house and the tree with her treasured Christmas decorations and displayed the Christmas cards we received. She cooked up a feast that left us as stuffed as the turkey and smiled contently on Christmas morning as we opened one present after another. It wasn't until I was grown with children of my own that I came to appreciate why that Christmas was so special to her. It wasn't that she didn't love the Christmases at home with her family. It was just that sometimes grown-ups have to steal away from the familiar to feel the simple joy of Christmas that children instinctively know. That is what she found on the Mediterranean cruise she took with my father. Just 10 days before Christmas, they set sail on the Constitution, accompanied by good friends of theirs, Mac and Betty Johnson, and my father's parents. Mom and Betty, her best friend, spent most of their time on deck, basking in the sun. She loves to reminisce about the coastline and the beautiful blue water of the Mediterranean. She says it didn't feel like Christmas time at first, having left the snow behind, surrounded now by palm trees and whitewashed buildings at every turn. At the beginning of the tours, she and Betty shopped non-stop. Mom was thrilled with the variety of merchandise. From pictures of Spanish dancers, to jewelry, to lace tablecloths, to handbags. My father swore she had a handbag for every port they set foot in. Once the shopping frenzy wore off, Mom began to notice the people, struck first by how different they were. She told me about the dances the locals performed and how charming they looked in their native costumes. Mom told me that Americans dressed very conservatively at the time compared to Europeans. She said Betty couldn't get over how freely the locals walked around, half-dressed in bathing gear, ready for a swim at any moment. But the greatest contrast was in Morocco, where they constantly passed women on the street who wore Arabic clothing, their faces half hidden from public view. She told me how out of place she felt, a stranger in a foreign land. They traveled all over the Mediterranean coast on that trip. They saw the ruins of Pompeii, struck by the nearly 2,000-year-old tragedy and awed by the ancient architecture. They traveled the Riviera and took in the sights at Barcelona with its famous bullfighters. They stepped into several cathedrals sprinkled throughout the cities, impressed with the gorgeous stained glass and the intricate carvings. Of all the sights she saw, however, the one that made the deepest impression on Mom was the monastery of San Juan de la Peña, the oldest monastery in Spain. It's partially carved out of the side of the mountain that looms above it, and my mother always speaks about it in hushed tones. She said they happened to visit a few days before Christmas, and it touched her then how vivid the Christmas story seemed to be there in the quiet, natural majesty of the medieval monastery. In the days that followed, they passed through many cities and noticed signs of Christmas everywhere. They saw decorated trees outdoors in plazas and inside shops. They saw a Santa in the middle of one town and a tree curiously covered in gold foil in another town square. The longer they traveled, the more she felt a kinship of Christmas spirit, even though she was far from home. But the Christmas miracle, as my mother calls it, came on Christmas Eve during their last day in Morocco. They were traveling back to port in a rented car when Mom noticed a camel resting in a field not far from the side of the road. She'd never seen one in real life before, and she said it brought the account of the wise men to life in a way she'd never experienced. Mom says that she'd always loved the account of the three wise men bringing gifts to the baby Jesus, following nothing but a star and their belief that a king had been born. But the Arabic garb she'd seen for days, and then the camel resting in the field, it ceased to be a story, and it became an experience she could see and smell. Perhaps it was the experience of standing in the middle of buildings and walking down streets that are thousands of years old. Perhaps it was the mix of exotic sights, sounds, and smells. Or maybe it was that she was so much closer to the birthplace of Jesus on that Mediterranean trip than she ever was sitting at home in front of her Christmas tree. Whatever the reason, Mom's favorite Christmas will always be the one she spent away from home on a journey to a foreign land. An experience, she says, not too unlike the one Mary and Joseph had that very first Christmas.
Plenty of Christmas trees have presents for family pets underneath them because Fido and Kitty are as much a part of the family as the people they adore. Or, in the case of Kitty, the people who adore her. Of course, it's questionable whether our pets understand the meaning of Christmas, but there's no doubt that they understand the frenzy of opening presents, or that the box itself is as much fun as the gift inside. And they deserve all the pampering they get on Christmas Day, whether or not they understand. After all, they've fetched balls and shown off their tricks, curled up in our laps and purred with contentment. They even stay loyal when Junior comes along and steals the show.
Yep, that's me, right there. Crawling, swinging, sticking everything in my mouth that I could lay my hands on. Aren't I cute as a button? Well, that's what my mother always told me, but I'm not sure that Blackie would agree. That's Blackie, the poodle my parents had before I was born. He was our family pet for 14 years and my constant companion when I was a young boy. He wasn't always excited about me. I was a wobbly mess at first, and I grabbed hold of anything I could reach and pulled as hard as I could to get it to my slobbery mouth. Blackie was quick, though. My folks told me he managed to keep out of my way most of the time. That's only fair because he was the true firstborn. Blackie was always in rare form at Christmas. He got as excited about the presents as I did, which was great because Christmas was a big deal in my family. Mom spent lots of time signing Christmas cards by hand for everyone in the family and for all our friends and neighbors. And she and Pop would decorate our shiny silver tree, carefully placing the balls in the right places. Mom wrapped gifts as she bought them and then placed them under the tree. Blackie wagged his approval. Mom made Christmas treats and sugar cookies. Dad displayed the Christmas cards we received on the wall above the hall table. The spread was impressive by the time Christmas rolled around. We always gathered at Nana and Grandpop's house on Christmas Eve. It'd be my folks and my dad's younger sister Nancy. Sometimes his older sister Aunt Glenda and her family would come. There were presents everywhere, and we took turns opening them. It was the typical stuff. A new shirt for Grandpop, perfume or jewelry for Nancy, the latest appliance or pretty dish for Nana, something for the house for Mom, socks, a tool, or other gadget for Pop. After we ate Christmas dinner, we piled in the family station wagon and took off through town to see the Christmas lights. I enjoyed the downtown department store displays the best. What a show they put on for the season. From the Chevrolet dealership to the First National Bank display of Santa's sleigh. Then it was back to our house and to bed. The next morning, Blackie was in on the act. Until I arrived on the scene, Mom said he stole the show. He always got his special present and tore into it until he freed it from the wrapping. Year after year, Blackie hit the jackpot Christmas morning with a bone or a chew toy. He was never disappointed. He was a good sport, too, because I moved in on his territory with gusto. It wasn't intentional, you understand. It's just that those natural good looks and boyish charm simply soaked up the camera time. Blackie ended up in the background from that time on. He checked out my Christmas loot just in case it was worth chewing on, but my enthusiasm usually got in the way. He didn't appreciate it when I claimed his bone for my own. I think Mom set that one straight. We were pals from the beginning, though, and he kept an eye on me. I loved my stuffed dog, and later, I loved Blackie. I made him a part of the action every chance I got. His last Christmas with us was when I was 6, and I made him a dog bed for his present with my pop's help. The following Christmas felt empty, like a member of the family was missing. We talked about him all during the day. Later, my mom and I wrote him a letter and put it in his stocking. She told me Santa would deliver it, and I knew in the way only a little boy can that she was right.
For a boy or girl, there's no more exciting gift to open up on Christmas morning than a puppy or kitten. It's hard to keep that kind of present a secret between the yipping or mewing, wiggling or scratching. Still, the sheer delight of a puppy or kitten with a bow around its neck is worth any hassle involved in wrapping a present of that kind. And there's nothing to rival a puppy or kitten's enthusiastic kisses and soft fur.
The Christmas my brothers and sisters and I opened up the box with a cold black kitty cat inside is still the happiest Christmas I remember. What's funny is that my parents didn't have a lot of money to spend on Christmas presents. With 5 kids to feed and clothe on my dad's salary from the plant, my parents had to be creative at Christmas to manage to put gifts under the tree. I can just imagine how the conversation went between my mom and dad. "Carl," she probably said, "I saw a sign for free kittens in a neighbor's yard today, and I was thinking that might be the perfect present for the kids this year. You know, a cat could help with the mice, and they don't eat much. Besides, it teaches the kids some responsibility." Deep in his reading, Daddy probably grunted agreement. All the sign Mama needed to know she could get the cat. She was a gorgeous kitty, completely black from head to toe with bright green eyes that seemed to glow in the dark. We named her Christmas Cat. My oldest brother Sam got the idea to teach Cece how to walk on a leash. He said he'd heard some cats could do it. Cece took to her leash from the get-go, content to roam with us wherever our adventures led us. Of course, Cece went with us on our annual trip into town for Christmas shopping and taking in the sights. She was as curious about the animals in the nativity scene as they were about her, although she wasn't too impressed with the plastic deer or plastic people. One year, Sam even made up a version of the nativity story with a part for Cece in it. I think she was a shepherd's cat. We laughed and laughed as he told it to us, and we watched Cece smelling the sheep and donkeys as if she was playing the part. It's amazing the amount of love and joy a pet can bring to your life. We may have been poor, but Cece made us feel like the richest kids in town.
Nothing signals the beginning of the Christmas season like the arrival of the Christmas tree. It seems like we barely recover from our turkey dinner feasting before Christmas trees start popping up everywhere. We see them in malls, reaching nearly to the ceiling, and we see them on coworkers' desks, miniature versions of the real thing. They fill living room picture windows with a peaceful glow, like beacons of light for weary shoppers and homeward-bound travelers. Whether your tree is artificial or real, whether it goes up the day after Thanksgiving or the day before Christmas, it calls to you to embellish it with ornaments, garlands, tinsel, and lights, and to fill the empty space beneath its boughs with presents for family and friends. So where did Christmas trees originate? How long ago did we start to use them in our homes and town squares? And what do all the ornaments mean? Christmas trees first appeared in people's homes in Europe in the 1500s. They were cut down from local forests and set up indoors undecorated. German immigrants introduced Christmas trees to the United States in the 1800s. When an illustration appeared in 1846 of Queen Victoria, Prince Albert, and the children around a Christmas tree, the popular monarchy's unofficial stamp of approval meant a booming industry was born. Early Christmas tree decorating commonly included fruits and nuts and other edible goodies, as well as colorful paper strips, tinsel made from real silver, and candles. Glass ornaments arrived on the scene in the late 1800s. Like the Christmas tree itself, these decorations also came from Germany, from a village called Lauscha. According to legend, a local glassblower invented the glass ornaments because he couldn't afford the more typical decorations of fruits, nuts, and candy. The ornaments' popularity quickly spread throughout Europe. On a trip to Germany in the 1880s, the American businessman W.F. Woolworth discovered them and guaranteed their enduring spot on American Christmas trees after he began importing them for sale in his stores. Of course, families have been making their own decorations for centuries. These ornaments are reflections of their resources at hand and symbols of their creativity. Families also used pictures from old magazines or catalogs and made ornaments from leftover material or the abundance of natural resources around them. In the mid-1900s, America added its touch to the Christmas tree market with the aluminum Christmas tree. The only thing green about it was when it reflected the green light shining from the rotating color wheel. These modernistic trees were often barely decorated since the rainbow light display was dazzling all by itself. Today, the majority of real Christmas trees are grown on Christmas tree farms, and Americans buy between 25 to 30 million of them each year. Artificial Christmas trees are also popular, and some of them are so realistic, they're hard to tell apart from the real thing. Between the sparkling lights and the handmade Christmas ornaments, there's something nostalgic about a Christmas tree. It's really a three-dimensional holiday storybook. Whatever kind of tree you use, however you dress it up, it's the clearest sign that the Christmas season is here.
Before there were video games and computers, before there were dolls that practically fed and changed themselves, before there were any stuffed animals that sang and danced and interacted with you, there were good old-fashioned toys. I mean toys that took your imagination to make them leap from reality to fantasy. Toys that didn't do anything by themselves at the push of a button. Toys that were lifeless until you made them come alive. Good old-fashioned toys like Barbie, for instance. Now, she's a classic. Girls have been dressing her and brushing her hair for decades and decades. You could even say Barbie's the leading lady of dolls. She's certainly always been up to date with the fashion of the time, and no girl could be considered out of style if she accessorized with Barbie. From hair to handbags, Barbie always looks good. And if Barbie wasn't your style, well, they were pretty little baby dolls to dress and feed and to take care of. Perfect practice for little girls who would someday grow up to be mommies. Now, maybe those dolls didn't talk or cry out loud. Maybe they were just stiff plastic and all they did was open and shut their eyes, but they still made you feel like a mommy. You could carry on a conversation with them and pretend to hear their baby sounds in response. It was up to you whether or not baby was happy after you fed her, not some computer chip inside of her. Some dolls were even big enough to walk with, and there was nothing like a simple tea or a kitchen dish set to play house with. You could pretend for hours with that, cooking, washing dishes, and taking care of your family. Then there was all kinds of great stuff for the boys, too. Back when the boys played cowboys and Indians, a trusty pistol and a cowboy hat were all that you needed to take on the enemy. If enough of your friends had the hats and the guns and the tomahawks, knives, and headdresses, you could fight it out for hours in the backyard, clear up to the time Mom called you in for dinner. And I guess you never outgrow that adventuresome spirit inside because it seemed like Dad was always trying to jump in on the act too. Of course, every little boy loves his cars, from race cars to fire engines, especially the fire engines. Some fire engines were pretty simple, and the only power that they needed was the power that flowed through your hand to race them off to the scene where you could pretend to rescue all the people trapped in the fire. If you were lucky, you got a fancy fire engine, one that had flashing lights or a ladder that you can control by cranking the handle. There were even gas station sets that you could assemble to drive your smaller cars through to fuel them up or to fix them. Smart mothers bought their boys punching bags. What a great way to work off your energy. You could duke it out with Popeye and he just came back for more. It was a great way to work on your right hook without hurting anybody, especially your brother. And then there were the toys that any child could love. Some of them are still around, proof that a classic can endure the changes technology brings. Classics like Play-Doh, Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head, Tinker Toys, bowling sets, and even that homely little sock monkey children still hug by its neck. Some of them aren't around anymore, unless they're up in an attic or tucked away in a trunk, but they sure were popular way back when. Remember the rocking lassie? She was better than a regular rocking horse. After all, she was Lassie, the best companion a child could ask for. Ready to take you on adventures and rescue you from danger if the going got too rough. If your parents could endure the noise, there was a very musical Mickey Mouse and a loud Donald Duck. And if your parents were really brave, they might have even bought you your very own drum set, guaranteed to make a noise only a mother could love. What a thrill to let loose on those drums with your very own drumsticks and bang out on the cymbals till your ears rang with the sound. Some of those toys seem so advanced for the time, like a working typewriter. You could put paper in it, bang out a message, maybe even a coded message to use for playing spy, or else a thank you letter that Dad made you write. How about a shiny robot? We just knew back then that we'd grow up to have shiny silver robots lumbering all over the planet, doing the chores that we didn't want to do, or else trying to take over the world. Either way, it was amazing to watch those lights flash. What hasn't changed is the thrill a child feels with a pile of wrapped packages just waiting to be opened. Oh, the anticipation. I suppose that's one of those things that makes Christmas so special. Watching the pile of presents grow until finally Santa has made his rounds and there are surprises just waiting for you to unwrap them and to let the fun begin.
Maybe it's 'cause I'm getting older. I don't know. But Christmas seems simpler to me now. When I was a kid, I got all caught up in the hype of Christmas. You know, visits to Santa Claus to tell him what I wanted for Christmas, shopping for gifts for the family, opening the days on the Advent calendar and counting down the days till school was out. It was nail-biting excitement waiting for Christmas Day. Nowadays, though, it's not quite that crazy. I see it through the eyes that have taken in a lifetime of moments. And the truest vision of Christmas for me now is the nativity scene. We had one when I was little, of course. It went out on the coffee table as soon as the tree went up in the living room. My sisters and I enjoyed putting it together, and we each had a wise man that was ours to place in the arrangement. For some reason, the cat didn't like my wise man, and she'd knock it over every chance she got. I spent a lot of time setting it back up again. Now my grandchildren come over and play with the nativity set up on my coffee table. It's fun to watch them act out the Christmas story, their chubby fingers wrapped around the camels and the sheep. They like the animals best, I've noticed. It's probably because children and animals approach the newborn Christ with the same simple trust and admiration. I like to find a quiet moment during the holiday season to sit and contemplate the nativity scene. I sometimes get on the floor so that I'm eye level with the set and the figures. I think to myself, now if I were that shepherd right there, the fellow who looks worn by the rough life of a shepherd, what would I be thinking? Would I feel embarrassed by my smelly, raggedy clothes? Or would I be so overcome with wonder at the message I'd just heard from the angels that I'd not even notice myself? I try to put myself in Joseph's shoes. What did he think when Jesus was born? Was he exhausted from the responsibility of traveling from Nazareth to Bethlehem, with his very pregnant young wife? Did he feel failure at not even being able to provide his new family with adequate lodging? Or was he just relieved that his wife and son were safe? Was he awed with the reality that the crazy notions that Mary and then an angel had asked him to take on faith had come to pass? And what about Mary? Was she frightened, exhausted, or worried? Did she long for the companionship of her mother and other female relatives? Women who would have ordinarily been at her side to help her with this overwhelming experience of childbirth? Or was she content with the privacy of the stable? Just Joseph by her side, with the infant God. I don't have the answers to the questions, but the Nativity helps to remind me that Christmas is a very human experience. I've never been sung to by a heavenly host, or traveled by a camel to a distant place in search of a king. I don't keep any livestock, and I've never had to move far away from home. I'm just a regular guy with a job and a house and a family. But I've felt the hand of God in my life and been on long life journeys of my own. When my oldest daughter was only 5, my wife and I prayed through a scary, dark night for her life as she fought meningitis. God was with me then. The sky might as well have opened up with a host of angels singing at the top of their lungs when the doctors told us she was out of danger. There's a piece of the Nativity in all of our lives. At times we've been the dumb sheep, mindlessly following the rest of the crowd, powerless to save ourselves from the dangers that lurk in the night. Or we've been embarrassed or scared or exhausted or worried. But we've also felt the relief of knowing that we are saved. What is the Nativity? There was a promise. There was a birth. And suddenly, God was with us.
Our memories remind us that the heart of Christmas doesn't really ever change. Though time passes, Christmas is still the magic of God among us, children's whispered wishes granted, and a world washed clean and white. It's still the hope for peace, goodwill among men, and a very happy new year.
There are memories of birthdays, anniversaries in spring. There's the time that I remember picking out my wedding ring. There are times that I remember when I was a kid in school. I remember the very first time that I jumped into a pool. But of all of these fond memories, the ones I hold most dear are the memories of Christmas. They seem to always bring a tear. Memories of Christmas, like brightly colored Christmas trees, snowdrifts that go past your knees. Oh, the presents you could squeeze, they're all filed here inside my mind. Memories of Christmas, and waking early Christmas morn to celebrate this child is born. I realize with memories, it's Christmas every day. I remember all the times that I would take my daddy's hand. We would walk down mattress store to see what he had planned. And sitting down with catalogs, I'd find the toys that I desired. I'd see them wrapped up in my mind. Surely Santa would be tired. Now I realize it wasn't gifts that made me feel so glad. It was spending time with those I love, the precious memories that I had. Memories of Christmas, like brightly colored Christmas trees, snowdrifts that go past your knees. Oh, the presents you could squeeze, they're all filed here inside my mind. Memories of Christmas, and waking early Christmas morn to celebrate this child is born. I realize with memories, it's Christmas every day. Waking early Christmas morn to celebrate this child is born. I realize with memories, like Santa Claus and Jingle Bells, or hearing stories Grandma tells. I realize